The anvil rang through the empty square, metal against metal. The sound that once meant prosperity now meant madness. 37-year-old Chukwudi Okafor stood in his workshop, hammer raised, sweat running down his face despite the morning cold. Around him, Allari town lay silent, workshops abandoned, forges gone cold, streets empty except for dust and broken dreams. But Chukwudi kept working. Welcome to Wealthra Stories, where every tale exposes what happens when power meets humanity, or when wealth collides with conscience, and when one decision changes everything. If you crave stories that challenge how you see the world, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. It had been 18 months since the last trader came from Lagos. 18 months since the export contracts stopped renewing. 18 months since the phone calls from Aba dried up like rivers in Harmattan season. The decline hadn't been sudden. It crept in slowly, one cancelled order at a time, one missed payment after another, one excuse building on the last until the truth became unavoidable. The market had moved on. Chinese imports were cheaper. Factory products were faster. Traditional blacksmith work from a remote town had become obsolete. The other blacksmiths had stopped months ago. Why make products when no buyers came? Why waste coal on fires that heated metal nobody wanted? Why pour sweat into craft that earned nothing? The traders from Lagos and Aba had stopped coming. The export deals had dried up like crops in drought. The town that once hummed with commerce now whispered with poverty. Allari had been proud once. 300 families, most of them connected to the blacksmith trade in some way. Metal workers, coal suppliers, leather craftsmen for handles, merchants who transported finished products. The town's reputation had spread across 3 states. When someone needed quality farming tools, they came to Allari. When restaurants needed cooking pots that would last decades, they sourced from Allari. When builders needed gates that combined strength with beauty, Allari was the answer. Then the world changed faster than the town could adapt. Factories in Asia produced similar products at a fraction of the cost. Nigerian middlemen found it easier to import containers than travel to remote towns. Quality stopped mattering when price became the only question. The slow death of craft economics played out in empty workshops and locked gates. Yet every morning at dawn, Chukwudi opened his workshop. Every evening at dusk, he closed it. Between those hours, he hammered, he shaped, he created. His neighbors thought he was mad. "Chukwudi, you're wasting your time," Eze Okonkwo would say, and sitting in the shade outside his own locked workshop. "You're making things nobody will buy. You're burning money to make products that will rust in your storage." Chukwudi would smile, wipe the sweat from his brow, and return to his anvil. "If there's life, there's hope." They mocked him for it. Children repeated it like a joke. "If there's life, there's hope," they'd sing, laughing at the crazy blacksmith who wouldn't accept reality. But Chukwudi had learned something from his father before he died. Something the other blacksmiths had forgotten. Your hands remember even when your mind gives up. The craft doesn't die because the market does. The skill survives the economy. So he kept working. In his storage room, products accumulated. Farming tools with perfect edges, cooking pots with flawless curves, gates with intricate designs, hooks strong enough to hold 100 kilograms, all of it unused, all of it waiting. Waiting for what? His wife Nkechi would ask, counting their dwindling savings. "Chukwudi, we have 2 children to feed, the school fees are due, the landlord is asking about rent." "I know," he'd say quietly, "just a little longer." How much longer can we survive on hope? He didn't have an answer, only faith, only the stubborn belief that something would change, that the market would return, that buyers would come. His workshop sat at the edge of town, where the main road from Onitsha curved toward smaller villages. It was a good location once. Now it was just a lonely spot where dust settled and nothing moved except Chukwudi's hammer. On a Friday morning in late August, the heat already thick at 7 a.m., Chukwudi was arranging new products when he heard something unusual. An engine, not the rough cough of an Okada motorcycle or the rattle of a Danfo bus. This was smooth, expensive, foreign. He stepped outside, squinting against the sun. A black Mercedes sedan sat angled half on the road, half in the gutter. The front tire was flat, the back door was open, and slumped against the car, barely conscious, was a man in a white agbada that had been beautiful before the dust and blood. Chukwudi froze. The man's head lolled to the side. His breathing was shallow, rapid, the kind that meant the body was fighting for every breath. Blood seeped through the fabric near his abdomen, darkening the white cloth in an expanding stain. His expensive leather shoes were scuffed from dragging himself out of the car. His gold watch caught the sunlight, flashing signals nobody would see. A Patek Philippe, Chukwudi noted absently, worth more than his workshop, worth more than everything he owned. This was not a man from Allari, this was someone important. Someone rich, someone whose presence here meant trouble in ways Chukwudi couldn't yet calculate. The morning air was still, carrying the smell of blood and expensive cologne. The road stretched empty in both directions. No other vehicles, no witnesses, just a dying man and a blacksmith who should have been somewhere else. Chukwudi moved closer, his pulse quickening. He looked up and down the empty road. Nobody else was coming. The man groaned, his eyes flickering open for just a moment before closing again. In that brief second, Chukwudi saw pain, confusion, and something else. Resignation, the look of a man who'd accepted death was coming. Or help, the word came out as barely a whisper. Please. Chukwudi's mind raced. This man needed a hospital, needed surgeons, blood transfusions, proper medical care. But the nearest hospital was in Onitsha, 30 kilometers away on roads that took 45 minutes on a good day. This man wouldn't survive that journey. Not bleeding like this, not in this heat, not in whatever vehicle Chukwudi could arrange. He looked around again. Where was his driver? Where were his people? How did a man like this end up alone on a forgotten road in a dying town? Rich men traveled with entourages, with security, with people whose job was to prevent exactly this kind of situation. From behind him, a voice called out, "Chukwudi, what are you doing?" He turned. Eze Okonkwo was walking toward him, 3 other men following. They stopped a safe distance away, staring at the car, at the man, at the blood. Their faces held the same expression, a fear mixed with the kind of practical wisdom that comes from surviving in places where helping strangers could destroy you. "Is he dead?" someone asked. "Not yet," Chukwudi said. "Leave him," Eze said firmly. "Walk away. This is not your problem." Chukwudi looked at the bleeding man, then back at Eze. "He needs help." "He needs a hospital," Eze corrected, "which we don't have. The nearest one is 30 kilometers away. By the time you get him there, he'll be dead. And you'll be the one found with a dead rich man in your vehicle. You'll be the one the police question. You'll be the one blamed." The other men nodded. One of them, Obina, stepped forward. "Eze is right. These rich people, they have enemies. Whoever did this to him might come back. You want to be here when they do. You want them thinking you had something to do with this." "What if his family thinks you robbed him?" another added, a younger man named Emeka. "What if they think you're the one who hurt him? Rich people don't ask questions first. They act. They have connections. Police, lawyers, politicians. They'll destroy you, Chukwudi. People like us don't survive accusations from people like him. The system doesn't work for us. You know this." Eze moved closer, lowering his voice. "Think about Nkechi. Think about your children. You have a wife and 2 kids depending on you. What happens to them if you get caught up in whatever this is? If the police arrest you? If his family decides to make an example? You think justice works the same for poor blacksmiths as it does for rich men?" "Maybe he's involved in something illegal," Obina added. "Drug money, political fights, business wars. These wealthy people, their lives are complicated, dangerous. Their problems become your problems the moment you touch them." Emeka nodded vigorously. "Remember what happened to Obi in the next village? He helped that politician's driver who crashed. 3 weeks later, police came asking questions. Obi spent 6 months in lockup before they finally released him. 6 months. His shop closed. His wife had to sell everything. He came out broken. All because he tried to help. Chukwudi's jaw tightened. Every word was logical. Every warning was valid. Every concern was rooted in real experience. They weren't being cruel. They were being survivors. They'd seen what happened when poor people got entangled with rich people's problems. They'd learned the hard way that kindness could be weaponized against you, that helping the wrong person could unravel your entire life. The smart thing, the safe thing, the thing that protected his family and preserved his future was to walk away. Let someone else find him. Let fate decide. Rich men had resources. Eventually someone would come looking. Eventually, or someone with power would take care of their own. But he'd spent the last 18 months doing what everyone said was stupid. Working when others rested. Believing when others gave up. Creating when others abandoned hope. If there's life, there's hope. The man groaned again. His hand moved weakly, reaching for nothing, searching for help that might never come. What would you do? Walk away like everyone said, or risk everything for a stranger? Drop your honest answer below. Then subscribe and hit the bell, because this story is just getting started, and the choice Chukwudi makes next will blow your mind. Chukwudi made his decision. "Help me lift him," he said. "Chukwudi, don't be a fool," Eze warned. "Help me lift him." Nobody moved. Chukwudi bent down, hooked his arms under the man's shoulders, and started dragging him toward his workshop. The man was heavier than he looked, or heavier with expensive fabric and gold and the weighteen of a life that had known comfort until this morning. "You're making a mistake," Obinna called out. "You'll regret this." Chukwudi didn't respond. He focused on pulling the man across the dusty ground, one step at a time, into the relative cool of his workshop. He laid him on the floor, propped his head on a folded tarpaulin. The man's eyes opened. They were dark brown, bloodshot, filled with pain and confusion, and something else. In intelligence, even dying, even in agony, this was a man whose mind was assessing, calculating, understanding the situation he'd found himself in. "Where am I?" "Allari town," Chukwudi said. "You're safe for now, but only for now." "The car, my driver." "There's no driver, just you and a destroyed Mercedes with diplomatic plates." "What happened?" The man tried to sit up, gasped in pain, fell back against the tarpaulin, his face contorted, sweat breaking out across his forehead. "Ambush. Os on the Onitsha road. 3 men, professional. They knew the route, knew the timing. They shot my driver first, killed him before he could react. Then they came for me." He paused, breathing hard. "They took my phone, took my briefcase, took documents worth more than you can imagine. Left me for dead in the back seat. Standard execution style, bullet to the gut. Let me bleed out slowly." "But you didn't die." "No, the bullet went through. Missed vital organs by millimeters. Pure luck. Or divine intervention, I'm not sure which." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I managed to crawl to the driver's seat. Got the car started, don't know how. Don't remember most of it. Just knew if I stayed there, I was dead. If they came back to check, I was dead. Had to move, had to find help." "How far did you drive?" "No idea. Maybe 5 kilometers, maybe 20. The tire blew out, hit something, lost control, crashed here. Thought this was where I'd die. Or in the dust on some forgotten road nobody travels." Chukwudi pressed a clean rag against the wound, applying steady pressure. The bleeding was slowing but hadn't stopped. The cloth soaked through quickly, warm and sticky. "I need to take you to a hospital. You need proper medical care, surgeons, blood transfusions." "No," the man said quickly, with surprising force given his condition. "No hospital. They might come back. They might be watching hospitals. They might have people inside. I need time. Just let me rest. Few hours. I'll call my people. They'll come for me." "Your phone was taken." "Then use yours." "I don't have one." The man stared at him as if he'd spoken a foreign language. A world without phones was unimaginable to someone like him. Someone whose life ran on constant connectivity. Someone whose power depended on instant communication. Then how do you communicate? "I walk. I talk, like people used to, like people still do in places like this." The man closed his eyes, processing this information, processing the reality of where he'd landed. A town so far from his world, it might as well be a different country. A place where the basic infrastructure of modern life simply didn't exist. What's your name? Chukwudi Okafor. I'm Daniel Amadi. The name hit Chukwudi like a hammer blow. Daniel Amadi, owner of Amadi Industries, or the manufacturing conglomerate that controlled everything from textiles to electronics to pharmaceuticals. The man who controlled half the manufacturing sector in southern Nigeria. The man whose factories employed 30,000 people. The man whose decisions influenced government policy. Forbes had listed him among Africa's richest, somewhere in the top 20. His face had been on newspaper covers. His voice had influenced elections. His endorsement had made careers. And he was bleeding on Chukwudi's workshop floor. "You're staring," Daniel said, his voice weak but still carrying the authority of someone used to being the most important person in any room. "I know who you are." "Then you know I can pay you. Whatever you want. Help me survive this, and I'll give you anything. Money, connections, opportunities. Name your price." Chukwudi shook his head. "I'm not doing this for payment." "Then why?" Chukwudi looked at the man who could buy entire towns, who made decisions that affected millions, who had probably never set foot in a place like Allari until desperation brought him here. "Because if there's life, there's hope." Daniel's eyes closed. "That's a dangerous philosophy." "Maybe, but it's kept me working when everyone else stopped." Outside, Chukwudi could hear voices gathering. The word had spread. The mad blacksmith had taken in a dying stranger. People were coming to watch the foolishness unfold. Chukwudi boiled water. I cleaned the wound as best he could, wrapped it with strips torn from his cleanest cloth. He gave Daniel water to drink, positioned him so breathing was easier. Then he sat on his work stool and waited. Hours passed. The crowd outside grew. Eze Okonkwo stood near the doorway, arms crossed, shaking his head in disapproval. "This won't end well, Chukwudi. When has helping a rich man ever helped a poor man?" Chukwudi didn't answer. He watched Daniel's chest rise and fall, and he watched color slowly return to the man's face. He watched consciousness come and go like waves. By afternoon, Daniel was strong enough to sit up. "You should have left me," he said. "Probably. My enemies will ask questions. They'll search for me. Eventually they'll find this town. Let them come." Daniel studied him. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "My wife says stupid." A weak smile crossed Daniel's face. "Wise woman." "She is." "What do you do here? And besides, save dying billionaires?" "I'm a blacksmith. Was a blacksmith. The town used to export our products. Lagos, Aba, even Ghana. Then the buyers stopped coming. The other craftsmen gave up. I didn't." "Why not?" Chukwudi shrugged. "Seemed wasteful. All that skill, all that training, all that knowledge, just abandoned because of temporary economics. The craft survived colonialism, civil war, military dictatorships. I seemed wrong to let it die because of market forces." Daniel looked around the workshop, really looked, saw the products stacked in careful rows, the farming tools sharp enough for surgery, the cooking pots so perfectly formed they could have been industrial, the gates that belonged in mansions. "You made all this yourself?" "Me and my father's training." "These are excellent quality, better than what most factories produce." "That's what the buyers used to say. Before they stopped coming." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Help me to your storage area. I want to see everything." "You should rest." "I've been resting. Now I want to see." They walked slowly, Daniel leaning heavily on Chukwudi's shoulder. The storage room was crammed. 18 months of continuous production with no sales meant inventory that filled every corner, hung from every beam. Daniel moved through it like a man in a gallery. He lifted tools, or tested weightines, examined welds. His fingers ran over surfaces, checking for imperfections. He found none. "Who taught you to make this quality?" "My father, his father before him, 4 generations of Okafor blacksmiths." "And you're the last?" "Unless things change." Daniel was quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted. The weakness was still there, but underneath was the steel that had built an empire. Things are going to change, Chukwudi. I promise you that. Don't make promises because I helped you. Do what you need to do. I'll be fine. You really believe that, don't you? That you'll be fine even without intervention, even without help. I believe the work matters more than the outcome. Daniel laughed, then winced in pain. You're a philosopher pretending to be a blacksmith. Or a blacksmith who happens to think. They returned to the main workshop. Daniel was exhausted again. He sat heavily on a wooden bench. Do you have someone who can deliver a message to Onitsha? Someone trustworthy? My wife's cousin. He drives Okada. Good. I'll write something. He needs to give it to the first person he sees at Amadi Industries headquarters. No one else, just the security guard at the front desk. Tell him it's from me. They'll handle the rest. Chukwudi found paper and pen. Daniel wrote quickly, his handwriting shaky but legible. He folded it, handed it over. Tell your cousin there's 10,000 naira for him if he delivers this in the next 2 hours. He'll go for free if I ask him. Then the 10,000 is for you, for saving my life. I told you I don't want payment. And I told you I'm going to change things. That starts with paying people what they're worth. Chukwudi called for Moses, his wife's cousin. The young man appeared within minutes, took the letter, and roared off on his Okada before the gathering crowd could ask questions. And by evening the situation had shifted. 3 black SUVs arrived. Security men in dark suits, a private doctor, Daniel's executive assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Adana who looked at Allari like she'd discovered a species of poverty she'd only read about. They wanted to move Daniel immediately. He refused. I stay until morning. I need rest, and I need to talk with this man. The security detail didn't argue. They secured the perimeter. The doctor checked Daniel's wound. I upgraded Chukwudi's improvised bandaging, administered proper antibiotics. Adana made phone calls, arranging things, controlling narratives, managing the crisis. And Daniel sat with Chukwudi in the workshop as night fell, talking about craft and commerce, about skill and value, about what matters when everything else falls away. You could have left me to die, Daniel said. Everyone told you to. And it would have been the smart move. Smart isn't always right. My father used to say something similar before he built the company, before the money. He said character is what you do when nobody's watching and nothing's guaranteed. Wise man. He was. I forgot that for a while, got too comfortable with wealth, too insulated, too certain that money solved everything. Daniel gestured at the workshop. This place reminded me. You reminded me. That skill matters, that persistence matters. That showing up when everyone else quits is its own form of success. I'm just trying to survive. You're doing more than surviving. You're preserving something. Knowledge, craft, pride. That's rare. Morning came with ceremony. Daniel's people had arranged everything. A convoy, armed escort, medical transport. But before leaving, Daniel stood in front of Chukwudi's workshop and made a phone call on speakerphone. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. Yes, mister. And Amadi? Victor, I'm sending you coordinates. I want you to visit this town today. Allari, meet with a blacksmith named Chukwudi Okafor. Inspect his inventory. If it's what I think it is, I want immediate contracts. Full supplier agreement. Whatever volume he can produce, we buy. Whatever price is fair, we pay. Understand? Yes, sir. Immediately. And Victor, spread the word to our network. Let other manufacturers know there's quality work here. Help restore the trade routes. And this town was left to die. We're going to resurrect it. He ended the call. Looked at Chukwudi. You saved my life. I'm going to save your town's livelihood, not charity, business, because your work deserves markets, and my companies need suppliers I can trust. Chukwudi stood frozen. Around him, the crowd that had gathered to watch his folly was silent. Eze Okonkwo's mouth hung open. The other blacksmiths stared. I don't know what to say, Chukwudi managed. Say you'll keep working. Say you'll train others. Say you'll help rebuild what was lost. That's all I need. They shook hands. Daniel climbed carefully into the SUV. The convoy pulled away, leaving dust and disbelief in equal measure. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Eze Okonkwo walked slowly forward. Chukwudi, we, it's fine, Eze. It's not fine. We called you mad. We told you to stop. We mocked your hope. You were being practical. We were being cowards. Eze looked at the ground. Can you forgive us? Chukwudi looked at the man who had spent months telling him to give up. The man who represented all the voices of reasonable doubt. The man who was now asking for mercy from someone he'd treated as a fool. Open your workshop tomorrow, Chukwudi said quietly. Start working again. When the buyers come, they'll need more than I can produce. When they ask for recommendations, I'll send them to you. To all of you. Even after how we treated you. Especially because of it. You'll work harder. You'll remember what almost died. You'll appreciate what returns. Tears filled Easy's eyes. If there's life, there's hope. You really meant it. Every word. The transformation came swiftly. Within a week, Victor arrived with contracts and a team of quality assessors. They spent 3 days examining every product in Chukwudi's storage, testing welds, measuring tolerances, comparing specifications. Everything passed. Everything exceeded expectations. Contracts were signed for immediate delivery and ongoing supply. Within 2 weeks, trucks were loading products. Not just from Chukwudi's workshop, but from 3 others who'd reopened their forges at his recommendation. The buyers were impressed. The quality was exceptional. The prices were fair. Word spread through industry networks. More buyers came. Within a month, the forges of Allari glowed hot again, and the sound of hammers on anvils echoed through streets that had been silent. Young people who'd left for Lagos and Port Harcourt started calling home, asking if there was work. Families who'd scattered began returning. The market reopened. Food sellers set up stalls. The barber who'd closed his shop reopened. Life flowed back into the town like blood returning to a limb that had gone numb. Within 3 months, Allari was alive. Not just surviving, but thriving. Employment reached levels not seen in 5 years. New workshops opened. Apprentices were hired. The craft that had nearly died was being reborn, taught to a new generation who saw it not as obsolete tradition, but as valuable skill. The other blacksmiths did work harder. They did appreciate the resurrection. They remembered what they'd almost lost. They told the story of Chukwudi's faith, Daniel's gratitude, and the dying stranger who became the catalyst for renewal. And the story spread through markets and churches, at weddings and funerals, anywhere people gathered to share news. But they told another story too. The uncomfortable one, the one that didn't paint them as heroes. How they'd warned Chukwudi not to help. How they'd called him foolish for risking everything. How they'd mocked his hope and dismissed his persistence. How they'd walked away from a dying man because fear outweighed compassion. How they'd protected their comfort while he'd risked his future. It was Eze Okonkwo who carried the weight of it most heavily. He'd been the loudest voice telling Chukwudi to walk away. The most insistent warnings had come from him. And now, every time he saw Chukwudi, every time he deposited money from new contracts, every time he hired another apprentice, he remembered his cowardice. 6 months after that morning, Eze Okonkwo and 5 other blacksmiths stood in Chukwudi's workshop. They'd come together, having discussed this meeting for weeks, debating how to approach it, what to say, whether words could ever be enough. The youngest, a man named Emeka, who'd been particularly vocal about the dangers of helping strangers, spoke first. We came to apologize properly, not just words. We want to make it right. You've already made it right, Chukwudi said, not looking up from the pot he was hammering into shape. You're working. You're providing for your families. You're training young people. That's enough. It's not enough, Eze said, his voice cracking with emotion he'd been holding back for months. We told you to abandon a dying man. We chose fear over compassion. We chose safety over humanity. We chose the easy path over the right one. We need to acknowledge that. We need to own it. Obinna stepped forward, his hands clasped in front of him, like a penitent. When I think about what could have happened if you'd listened to us, Daniel Amadi would have died, bled out in the dust. The contracts would never have come. Our town would still be dead. Our families would still be hungry. All because we were too afraid to help someone in need. Too afraid to risk inconvenience for someone else's life. You were protecting yourselves, Chukwudi said, finally setting down his hammer and meeting their eyes. That's not a sin, that's survival. We were protecting our comfort, Emeka corrected. His young face aged by the weighteen of this realization. There's a difference. Protecting yourself from real danger is wisdom. Protecting yourself from inconvenience is cowardice. And we were cowards. We saw a man dying, and we calculated the risk to ourselves before we considered the cost to him. That's the truth we have to live with. Easy moved closer. The worst part is, we didn't just warn you against helping. We mocked you for months before that. Every day you worked, we laughed. Every product you made, we called it foolishness. Every time you said, if there's life, there's hope, we rolled our eyes and gossiped about your stubbornness. We treated your faith as stupidity, your persistence as delusion. You saw the same reality I saw, Chukwudi said quietly. Empty roads, no buyers, dying commerce. You just drew different conclusions. No, Obinna said firmly. We stopped drawing conclusions at all. We gave up. We let circumstances define what was possible. You didn't. You kept working not because you knew something we didn't, but because you refused to let external conditions determine your internal commitment. That's the difference we're trying to understand. That's what we need to learn. Chukwudi set down his hammer. What do you want from me? Forgiveness, Ezi said simply, and guidance. You saw something we didn't. You believed something we couldn't. Teach us how. I don't have special knowledge. I couldn't walk away. He was dying. That's exactly it, Obinna said. You couldn't walk away. We could. Easily. That's the difference between us. That's what we need to learn. They stood there, 6 grown men, weathered by work and humbled by circumstances, asking a peer to teach them something that couldn't be taught. Only learned through choices. Only understood through consequence. Chukwudi looked at them for a long moment. Then he said, Tomorrow morning, come to my workshop at dawn. Bring your tools. We're going to make something together, something for the hospital in Onitsha, something to donate, something to give without expecting return. What will we make? Beds, strong metal beds for patients who have nothing, beds that will last decades. We'll make 10, then 20, then however many we can before the need is met. Ezi frowned. But that's charity work. That's not profitable. Exactly. That's the point. You want to learn what I learned. Want you do work that matters more than profit. You help people who can't pay you back. You give when there's no guarantee of return. That's how you build character that doesn't run when trouble appears. They were quiet. Then, one by one, they nodded. The next morning, 7 forges burned bright in Allari. 7 blacksmiths worked side by side, creating beds for strangers who would never know their names. The metal sang. The hammers rang. The town was alive not just with commerce, but with purpose. Daniel Amadi returned 3 months later. Not in crisis, not bleeding. He came in daylight, with press, with photographers, with officials. He came to announce the opening of Amadi Industries' Northern Distribution Center, located in Allari, employing 200 people, sourcing primarily from local craftsmen. He stood in the town square, looking at the crowd, looking at Chukwudi standing quietly at the back. I was asked why I chose this town, why I'm investing millions here. The answer is simple. This town taught me something I'd forgotten, that showing up matters, that persistence has value, that helping someone when it's inconvenient and risky and possibly stupid is actually the smartest thing you can do. He paused. A man here saved my life, not because I could pay him, not because he knew who I was, but because I was dying and he refused to let that happen. That kind of character is rare. That kind of character deserves partnership. That kind of character builds economies that last. The applause was thunderous. But Chukwudi didn't move. He stood at the back, watching the celebration, thinking about the bleeding stranger and the choice that changed everything. Later, when the ceremonies ended and the crowds dispersed, Daniel found Chukwudi in his workshop. You're hiding from your own celebration. I'm working. The contracts don't fill themselves. Daniel laughed. Still the same. Still focused on the work. It's what I know. It's what saved me, and what saved this town. Daniel sat on the familiar wooden bench. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you found me dying on that road, when everyone told you to walk away, what made you help? Really? What was the exact thought? Chukwudi considered. I thought about my father, about what he taught me. He said a man's value isn't measured by what he accumulates. It's measured by what he does when nobody's watching, when there's no reward, when it costs more than it pays. He sounds like a wise man. He was a blacksmith, like me, like his father before him. We don't deal in philosophy, we deal in metal and fire and things that last. But he understood something important. That craft isn't just about product, it's about character, about showing up, and about doing the work even when it seems pointless. That's why you kept working when the town was dying. Yes, and that's why I couldn't leave you to die. Because giving up isn't just abandoning work, it's abandoning who you are. And I wasn't ready to do that. Not for comfort, not for safety, not even for good reasons. Daniel was quiet. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. You know what the hardest part of wealth is? You stop trusting people's motives. Everyone wants something. Every smile hides calculation. Every kindness expects return. You live your whole life wondering if anyone would help you if you lost everything. And now you know. Now I know. A blacksmith in a forgotten town helped me when I had nothing to offer. When helping me was dangerous. When every logical voice said, walk away. You helped anyway. It wasn't heroic, it was just decent. That's what makes it heroic. Decency when it costs you. Kindness when it's risky. Help when it's inconvenient. That's the real test of character, and you passed. Chukwudi shook his head. I didn't pass anything. I just did what my father taught me. Then your father passed, and passed it to you, and now you're passing it to this town. Daniel stood. I have to go. Meetings in Lagos, investors to brief, empire to run, but I'll be back, every month. Because this place reminds me who I want to be. They shook hands. Daniel left. Chukwudi returned to his anvil. That evening, Nkechi brought dinner to the workshop. She sat beside him while he ate, watching him work between bites. The children are asking when you'll come home. Soon, I need to finish this order. You always need to finish the order. That's what pays for the school fees you were worried about. She smiled. I was wrong to worry. You were right to worry. We had no guarantees. But you kept working anyway. Someone had to. She put her hand on his. I mocked your hope too. And in my heart, I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it. I thought you were being foolish, stubborn, refusing to accept reality. I know. How do you know? Because I thought it too. Every morning I woke up wondering if this was the day I should finally quit. Every evening I questioned whether I was wasting our future on dead dreams. But you kept working. If there's life, there's hope. Somebody had to believe it. And now everybody believes it. Now they don't need to believe. They have evidence. Nkechi was quiet. Then she said, when you found that man dying, when you helped him, you knew it could destroy us. You knew it could bring trouble. Why did you risk everything? Chukwudi set down his hammer. Because if I'd walked away, I couldn't have faced you. I couldn't have faced our children. I couldn't have told them to be good people while knowing I'd failed that test when it mattered most. Even if we'd lost everything. Especially then. What good is keeping everything if you lose yourself to do it? She kissed his forehead. The children have the best father in Nigeria. The children have a father who makes metal things and takes foolish risks. Same thing. Years passed, Allari flourished. The abandoned workshops filled again. Young people who'd left for cities returned to learn the craft. The export routes reopened, expanded, reached new markets. Daniel Amadi kept his word. Every month he visited. Sometimes with business, sometimes just to talk. Sometimes to bring his own children to see where their father had learned what truly mattered. The story spread beyond Allari. News articles called it an economic miracle. Business schools used it as case studies. Documentaries explored the resurrection of traditional craft. But in Chukwudi's workshop, the story was simpler. A man kept working when others quit. A man helped a stranger when others warned against it. A man believed in hope when hope seemed stupid. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, when the forge was cold and the town still slept, Chukwudi would stand in his workshop and remember that moment. The bleeding stranger, the impossible choice, the voices telling him to walk away. He'd made the right choice, not the smart choice, not the safe choice, but the right one. And that, he'd learned, made all the difference. Because wealth doesn't define character, crisis reveals it. And in that moment, when a dying billionaire needed help from a forgotten blacksmith, everything that mattered came down to one simple question. Who are you when nobody's watching and nothing's guaranteed? Chukwudi had answered with his hands, his workshop, and his stubborn hope. If there's life, there's hope, and sometimes, if you're brave enough to believe it, hope answers back. So tell me, what would you have done if you were Chukwudi? What lesson hit you hardest from Chukwudi's story? Tell me in the comments, I'm reading every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so we can keep these conversations going. Let's grow together.